This show is sponsored by Sevi, answering all your commercial real estate needs. Sevi is the first commercial real estate company committed to the 4 C's: commercial real estate, community, content, and culture. Go visit Sevi at Sevi, SEVI, properties.com. Again, SeviProperties.com. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the DMV Business Show. I'm your host, Otto Sevilla, and today I have a very special guest for you. We have Brian Valdivia. Brian is the CEO of Beltway Lending. Welcome to the show, Brian.
Thank you very much for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity.
Of course, the pleasure is all mine. Before we go into your personal and business journey, I'd like the audience to get to know what you do. So in case they haven't heard of Beltway Lending, obviously here in our area, we're very familiar with the Beltway. This is what we call it, which I know not everyone in the United States calls it that. But what do you guys do there?
Yep. So right before Beltway, like just to give you the full background, like I'm a full-time real estate investor as well. I have 202 rentals that I've accumulated in just under 4 years. So when Beltway Lending was kind of being formed, I have a partner named Ross. He's incredible. We're sitting there, and he's the creative, by the way. Like he's the guy. Like I know where my shortcomings are. You give me a spreadsheet, I'm the guy, but creative is not me. He's like, we got to come up with a name that kind of can transcend Baltimore. He's like, every state kind of has this and has that. We were looking at like Old Bay lending and things like that. And I was like, how about Beltway lending? And he goes, well, every state does have a Beltway, I guess. They might call it different things. And so Beltway lending, we cater to investors. We do financing for investors who either want to fix and flip or keep a long-term rental or both. And in 2.5 years, July of 22 was when we formed it. We've originated crazy numbers. So our first full calendar year of 23, we did around 114 million in loan origination.
Wow.
And then in 24, we did 172 million in loan origination. So really good growth chart there. We're really happy about that. I will be honest, when we started Beltway, Ross and I figured we'd have 2 employees, we'd originate 20 loans a month, and now there's 22 employees, and it's a little bit bigger operation than we kind of expected.
Wow. So prior to Beltway, did you start with investing in real estate? Is that where it all originated from?
I did. So like a lot of people, I saw real estate as kind of like a path forward. Like I know that it creates more real estate creates more millionaires than maybe any other thing, but that wasn't the motivation. I used to work for a company called Northrop Grumman. I was a financial analyst, hence that, spreadsheet numbers kind of guy, right? Like, and I had the stereotypical work environment. I actually worked in a basement. I didn't have any windows. My coworkers weren't that great, all the things. But real estate was where I was like, man, I really see a path forward here. So I'd gotten a hard money loan from a local lender, and as that project was kind of moving forward, I was like, you know what, I'm gonna call him. Like I called that lender in 2020, and I said, in like late 2020, I said, I want to come work for you. And they said, no, we don't hire people without experience. And I said, well, how about I come work for free? How could you turn that down? I'm a wizard in Excel. Like I can help in some way.
Hmm.
Ultimately, they paid me exceptionally well for the rest of 2020 and brought me on full time in 2021. I got a taste of being in the real estate industry and working for a lending company, and I got to talk to investors all day, which further fueled that like drive for me to want to buy rentals and to I've always wanted to do rentals versus flips. I'm 34. The time I was 30 or 31 or whatever, 31. And for me, it just seemed like a really good long-term path. And that position went its course for about 18 months, and then Beltway Lending was formed, and here we are.
Brian, so 2020, that was your first property. Was this single family, a condo, row house?
Oh man. Okay. So Baltimore has a crazy reputation for like being kind of violent, and look, parts of Baltimore are bad and parts are great, and I'm a big believer in all that. The first house I bought was in the part of Baltimore that gives it the bad reputation. I was in Southwest Baltimore, $20,000 for the house, didn't have much in the bank. I did seller financing. Actually, ironically, full circle, I now lend that guy hard money that sold me that deal, which is pretty cool. But that first house took about 18 months to like it's every problem that you can imagine. Like I had it,
Yeah.
squatters, people stealing electric, all the things. Um, it didn't make any money, right? But when it inevitably sold because of the seller finance situation and because it sold like market appreciation, I did walk away from closing with like a nice chunk of change, which I then put into a hard money loan in the county. That's when I met that lender that I like inevitably went to work for. I bought that first house actually in 2019 and sold it in 2020. And that's once I started working with that lender, I kind of saw everything. It was like the world kind of slowed down, right? I could see the hard money, I could see the rehab, I could see the refi. And I bought my first rental May of 2021, May 5th, 2021. And then that's when I started accumulating from there.
Okay. Wow. I mean, leaving Northrop Grumman to go full time, becoming a hard money lender. I mean, I don't know what the setup was, if there was some type of base or was it all commission or bonuses, but that's a big jump.
The guy that owned that company, his name is Josh Shine, and I look to him as a mentor even still to this day. And he said to me, so I made like I think I made 65 at Northrop. And he
Okay.
said, "Here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna pay you a salary, a small salary with a bonus structure." And it was a very generous bonus structure, and the salary was a little light. It was the first time I'd ever like truly had a commission check, right? And
Hmm.
he said, if you come into my workplace, because they didn't have a lot of faith in me, like I didn't have industry experience, and I understand. He said, if you come into my company and you do a terrible job, in 12 months, you will have made the same thing you would have made at Northrop Grumman. We'll shake hands, and that'll be the end. He said, but if you kill it, you will kill it. And I killed it. I built out a DSCR program for them that went on to be like we got awards for being the number one originator by quantity and volume in the country. And I started like that was for the year of 2021, and we didn't start originating really until like March 1st. So it was like a really impressive thing. It was DSCR was just becoming hot and popular, and it was an option for investors that hadn't previously existed.
So for those hearing and they're like, what is DSCR?
DSCR acronym stands for Debt Service Coverage Ratio. So it's a loan very similar to the loan that you would get to go buy a house to live in. So, but it's not. It's targeted for an investment property. So it's a 30-year term. Generally, there's some other options, but a 30-year fixed loan where it qualifies based off of the property's income versus the borrower's DTI. So the property has to bring in, it looks at the mortgage, the new mortgage payment, the new PITI, and it looks at the rent that it brings in. And truly, like now, it's kind of evolved over time, but now you need to have a 1-to-1 ratio. So if your mortgage payment is 1,500 a month, you need to have rent of 1,500 a month. And if your rent is 1,501 penny, the loan will qualify as long as your credit score is greater than like 640 or 650. But the big benefit there is like there's a lot of people out there who buy flips and use hard money loans because of their self-employed or credit things or things like that, where they wouldn't qualify for traditional bank financing. They don't even know these products exist, where the same way they're underwritten on a hard money loan, they could be underwritten on a DSCR loan, which is a 30-year loan for a stabilized property. It opens up the possibility to own rentals for a lot of self-employed people, people that are not showing a ton of income or just not making a lot of income. As long as that property is producing a positive cash flow, it can generally be approved.
So this loan is on a stabilized property, but if you're doing a fix and flip when it's vacant and there's no income coming in, this might not be the best program for that.
Correct. So the big qualifier, like the big separation between a hard money loan and a DSCR loan is that DSCR loans are going to require an appraisal. And on that appraisal, there's a form that's going to look at market rent based on the condition. And if you were buying a distressed property or a property that needed severe renovation, that appraisal form is not going to come back as an as appraisal. It's going to come back subject to. They're going to say, "Hey, this is the value subject to these repairs," and that's kind of got to make it not work. So what we say, that's usually where the best rentals are formed, though. So if you can find a distressed property and get a great deal, use a hard money loan, renovate, other people's money. That's my favorite thing, borrow the hard money, borrow the renovation money, do the rehab. We can refinance you into a 30-year loan. Generally, you're going to pick up equity, right? Because as an investor, I'm not paying $10,000 to gain 10,000 in equity. I want to pay 10,000 and gain 20 or 30,000 in equity. So that's kind of it's an incredible strategy. At one point there was a loan called fixed to rent from a huge national lender, and they realized like it became their biggest product, but they realized they were leaving money on the table because they could charge origination on the hard money and origination on the DSCR, not just one fixed fee.
Hmm.
But that's actually how I've accumulated every single rental I own. I buy it with a hard money loan, renovate it, I do some sort of value add, and then I refinance it. And what's really great about our products is their seasoning period is super low. So in some cases, there's no seasoning. You can buy it and refinance it like a week later. And that allows you to scale pretty quickly.
Do you also do any hard money loans or not at all at Beltway Lending?
No, we do. Absolutely. We're definitely
Okay.
well known for DSCR. So right now, Beltway is doing right around 100, 90 to 100 loans a month. But, we have 90 loan months. I'd say that probably 20% of that is going to be hard money. And then the other 80% is going to be DSCR. My team understands DSCR loans better than the underwriters. And that's kind of a like result of the fact that I've always needed to use them for myself, right? Like,
Hmm.
look, getting a hard money loan can be scary. Not knowing the exit is scary. Um, so when you do that, I want to make sure that I know I can get out of my own hard money, which further benefits all of my clients, obviously.
Sure. So all your clients are real estate investors, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Now, is this only residential as far as the loans you're doing, under 4 unit, or are you doing farm or commercial, whatever it may be, or is it just
No,
residential?
that's a great question. So I would say the vast majority of what we do is going to be 1 to 4 unit properties or condos, kind of in that bucket, single
Hmm.
family, duplex, triplex, quad, or condo. We also have a really good DSCR product for 5 to 10 unit properties. We do small balance commercial, maybe that 500 to $1 million range. We do some mixed use. Mixed use is a tough qualifier because it has to be a certain percentage residential commercial. Anything greater than 11 units for residential, we generally refer you to. We have a couple people we work with who are really great. The one thing I won't let my team do is start a loan that I don't think we can close or that we don't have the confidence to close. I've been in those shoes where I've been working with a lender and I'm at day 45 and I'm like, hey, like you told me it was 30 days. Like, how do we get here? I told my lender we were going to pay it off in 30 days. He's now asking questions. I don't ever want to put people in that position. So generally 1 to 4, 5 to 9, that's our sweet spot.
Hmm. And you said commercial also, but small balance sheet commercial, so under a
Yes,
million, right?
exactly. Yep, exactly.
Okay. And I'm just curious, just because I'm in the commercial real estate space, right? So for the commercial, is it all type of assets? So it can be office, retail, storage, medical.
So there's a handful of assets that we won't touch, but for the most part, it's pretty wide open. I actually have a pretty slick 30-year 30-year DSC true DSCR for commercial. Um, that's like one of our cooler products. That's why I try to keep it under a million. After that, like it starts to shift to a lot of those 5 and 7 or 10 year terms, But our team does an exceptional job of understanding, underwriting, and processing like DSCR type loans. So that smaller commercial stuff does well.
Okay. That's great. So, for example, if I'm an investor hearing this and I'm like, wow, this is a great option for me. So let's say they have a stabilized asset, whatever, under a million or even residential or condo, whatever it may be. So you said it needs to make, just to make the math simpler, we said 1-to-1 ratio, correct?
Yep.
So let's say that this property is bringing in $1,000 a month in rent.
Yep.
Now, what are you looking for as far as, okay, should the property be worth, does the value matter, or?
That's a great question. A lot of lenders are going to have a value limit. It has to appraise for $100,000. We try to stick to that for a couple reasons. One, our value limit's actually lower than 100, but there's a lot of things that come with sub 100K properties. Like, um, one of the things is like your borrower class can be a little bit different. Your The fee structure is also kind of painful, right? So generally on these, we charge between 1.5 and 2 points. But when we have a loan for 65K, like I have to have some sort of like minimum origination, right? So let's say we just start 2,000 or 2,500. It starts to make it feel like you're paying 4 points or 3.5 points to get a DSCR loan, and a lot of times it doesn't necessarily make the most sense. One thing that uh one thing you're definitely going to find with my team and everybody that works for me is we're going to give you a really honest answer. So if you come to me and you're like, "Hey, I have a property, it's bringing in 1,500 a month, and the new mortgage is going to be 1,400 a month," probably going to suggest that we look at the leverage there. Like, you don't have a big cash flow split. Like, if you have property management, you're probably already in the red. But like 1 month and you could be upside down. That's not really like, look, if you come to us and push us, we'll do the loan. Like, we're going to tell you we think that we should reevaluate or restructure though. But to answer your question, yes, that's exactly it.
Okay. So as long as basically your income, the property that's at least meets the mortgage, the right what it's covered. So it's 1,000, and hopefully the mortgage is 1,000 with you.
Exactly.
Okay. All right. Perfect. You mentioned as far as points, I think you said a point and a half or two. So what are the typical fees or rates if someone was interested in this type of product?
So right now, man, it's hot. I mean, everybody sees the market is aggressive right now, right? So we're seeing DSCR in the sixes, which is great. This is April of 25. So we're we're seeing DSCR. I say that so I can look back and laugh when they're in the fours, you know.
And
But
this is
right now we're
principal and
seeing
interest at 6%, correct?
correct,
Okay.
exactly. Now these are the escrows are included in the payment. Obviously, those are kind of flat, not determined by the rate. But yes, we're seeing P and I in the high sixes, mid to high sixes. And it's great. That's in some cases that's better than you can get on a homeowner loan, depending on where you go.
That is very true. And it's 30-year AM.
Yep.
Yeah, that's great. Okay.
You asked about the fees as well. So,
Yes.
other than the origination, which 1.5 to 2 is kind of based on volume, right? So, the first loan you do with us is probably going to be 2 points. Unless you come to us with like two or three loans at once, we'll probably start to shift to that investor pricing. Once we start doing, a bunch of loans, we drop down to 1.5 pretty easily without a lot of like compatible. We usually offer it to a borrower versus the needing to be asked. In other fees, unfortunately, I don't get to collect the other fees. A lot of those go to like the legal teams and things like that. There's probably around $1,400-$1,500 in doc fees and underwriting fees that we don't really get to touch. So I would say if you were conservatively underwriting this and you thought 2 points and $1,500, you're probably pretty close.
Are they any prepayment penalties?
Yes, there's a wide variety of prepayment penalties. So most common that you'll see with every lender is right now is going to be a 5-year flat prepayment penalty. That means that for 5 years, it's 5%. And it's based on principal balance. So in year three, you're paying 5% of the existing principal balance. When these DSCR loans first started, there was really only one option, and it's a great option. It's a step down 3-2-1. So the first year you have it, it's a 3% of the balance. Second year, two. Third year, one.
Hmm.
One thing, so the longer the prepayment or the more aggressive the prepayment penalty, the cheaper the rate's going to be. So in that 5-year, 5%, you're going to get a lower rate than you are on a 3-year, 3-2-1. The one thing that the investor in me coaches and like I try to talk like is I need you to look at more things than just the number on a piece of paper. If you have $100,000 loan or $120,000 loan, please remember that it's 5%. It's a little less daunting, and you're also only borrowing 70, 75, maybe 80% of the value. So one, if you had to fire sale it, you're not going to be upside down. But two, 5% of 100 grand, you're only looking at a $5,000 fee here, right? Like some people
Hmm.
are like, oh, 5%, that's crazy, right? Until you really look at the bigger picture. I really think that one thing I say to any investor I talk to, I'm like, look, let's look at the overall picture here. If you borrow less leverage, it might make sense to take a higher prepayment penalty because if you tried to sell this next year, God forbid something happened, like my thing is you never want to be trapped in a loan. You never want to be trapped in a property. But if you have lower leverage, one, your principal is going to be lower, your 5% fee is going to be lower, and it's so much easier to overcome that when you're at 50, 60, 70% than when you're at 80, obviously.
Hmm.
Um, you kind of eliminate some risk there.
Yeah. Is there any personal guarantee?
Yeah, so really, really great point. These are personally guaranteed by the LLC owners. Now, there's different ways to structure your LLC depending on what you bring to us. determine who the guarantor is. However, one of the best points of a DSCR loan is this. It's they're basically like designed to close in your LLC. Once it closes, even though you personally guarantee it, it's not going to reflect on your personal credit score. Um, so when I bought so in June of 22, I bought I bought a house to live in. Like I was upgrading from where I lived. And because of like tax filing, I had to like get an extension or whatever. Like a lot of them they're not reflected on my personal credit. So if anybody's ever bought a house that's a real estate investor and they have rentals, you got to submit hundreds of leases just to qualify income.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so plus the drag on your credit can be great when you have even five rentals showing up on your credit. That's painful, so it's definitely an added benefit.
Okay. So there's a full personal guarantee for the full 30 years if they were to have it for 30.
Correct.
Now, you mentioned the prepayment penalty for 5 years. So after 5 years, does it drop off?
Correct. Yep. And if you had a 3 year after the third year, it drops off completely. One thing I'll give you a look into something. I want to express to you, like, I'm going to show you how crazy we know these loans that most people don't.
Mm-hmm.
Prepayment penalties actually work in two ways, and most people only know the first, which is what you're alluding to. If I pay it off early, I pay a fee. If you ask any lender or any other ways a prepayment penalty can hurt me, they're probably going to tell you no. But the answer is actually yes. If you make any payment toward principal in the prepayment period, even if it's $1, it triggers the prepayment penalty and it's added to the back of the loan. Most people don't know that. Most people don't read the loan docs. Most people don't take the time to figure that out. So we make sure we talk to borrowers and we say, look, if you plan on paying extra to principal, take that money and put it in a savings account and wait till that prepayment penalty ends and then dump it all on at once. Do not do it early because you could be setting yourself up for a 5% fee there. Now we don't collect that. It's not even my money. It goes to the servicer, whoever it goes to. But little tidbit for you there.
Yeah, that's great advice. Thanks, Brian. Speaking of servicer, I assume you're not servicing all these loans, or are you?
So we service our hard money loans in house.
Okay. So that
We have
20% you do service.
Yes, we have a
Okay.
really nice, expensive software, and it's really great. It kind of takes a lot, it does a lot of the heavy lifting. As far as the DSCR loans, everybody's had nightmares with their DSCR servicer, whether it's there's a bunch of big names, right? Fay, Shell Point, Rushmore, Mr. Cooper. There's it's kind of they kind of all run the gambit, and unfortunately, I can't handpick who they go to. I truly wish I could.
Okay. All right. So just the hard money loans, basically, you keep in house.
Exactly.
Well, we've been focusing a lot so far, Brian, on not hard money, right? So that product is I mean, obviously, besides being different, it's more of short term. How does that, as far as costs, fees, also terms, all the above?
Yep. So in our market, which I'm sure you're familiar, hard money ranges anywhere from 11 to 13%, usually 2 or 3 points.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes you'll find a private lender and be cheaper, and sometimes you'll find somebody and they'll take more advantage, right? But that's a good average, like 11 to 13 to 2 to 3 points. Our hard money is generally going to be 2 points, 2 to 3 points, and we're going to be right around that 12% number. If there's some crazy factors, we might be 11. If there's some even crazier factors, we might be 13. Um, we have actually a really, really unique hard money product that is super beneficial for a lot of people. So think about the barriers to enter real estate: money in the bank, down payment, all of those things, and a little bit of fear and a little bit of risk, obviously. But the big one is usually like being able to cover that down payment or having zero experience. A lot of people don't realize that until they go to get their first loan and they're like, oh, we don't work with new investors. So we came up with a product that is literally tailored for first-time investors. Our product takes a 10% down payment of the purchase price with zero experience. So if you get turned away from another lender, and they're out there because we're all in, we're in the same region, who I'm talking about, like they're out there. When they tell you, hey, we don't work with anybody that doesn't have at least one deal under the belt, we can do it. And we can do it with only 10% down. And we're not going to kill you on rate and fees either. It's generally going to be that 12 and 2, 12 and 3.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's like something that I'm most proud of. Like with Beltway, the overall goal has always been to like lower the barrier, help people get started, I started with not very much, right? So if I can do that for people and I can help you get through the first one, that's what we're here for, man. And I think that product really pushes that mold.
That's great. How much down again?
10% of the purchase price.
Okay.
So, I mean, I'm in Maryland, Baltimore. I see a lot of deals where they're buying them from like 50 to 100 grand. You're talking
Hmm.
about 5 to 10 grand down payment plus closing costs, which is probably another like 3, 4, or 5 grand. I also don't have any loan limits on that. So, I like the loan to be close to like 80K total, like with purchase and rehab, just because again, we get into that super expensive state, right? Like
Hmm.
there's still a $2 or $2,500 minimum origination. So you borrow 50 grand, it feels like you're paying a lot. But we do a lot of loans where someone is buying the property for less money than they need to borrow for rehab. They're buying it for 40 or 50 and they need 100 grand for rehab because we're in Baltimore, where that's our backyard. And those we know those neighborhoods. We know it Baltimore's block by block. We know the
Hmm.
neighborhoods that they're going to appraise for 220, some of them way more than that. So the numbers do support that exit, whether it's a rental or a flip.
So that was going to be my next question. As far as the rehab cost, then, so you said 10% of the purchase price. So what about rehab then?
We
Does
fund 100% of rehab. As
100%
long
of the
as,
rehab?
yeah,
Okay.
our total loan is going to need to be less than 75% of the ARV. So that's actually a really good indicator. And some good advice always for new borrowers or for people who are getting started or even seasoned guys who are unsure of a deal is get it under contract and take it to a lender. If you can find the money, you have a good deal. I've already told you that I got a 10% down product. So if you bring me a contract and my team's underwriting it and we come back and we're like, hey, we're going to need you to put 15% down or 20% down. And it's not because of assets and it's not because of credit score or anything like that. That's an indication to you that, hey, this one might be a little bit tighter than average.
Hmm.
We're hard money lenders. We don't make money if we don't lend money, right? So we want to get that out. We want to get it down the street, and we want to ultimately help you make a sound decision. Everybody wants to be a part of a winning deal. No one wants to be a part of one where you're going to lose money because it's going to be everybody else's fault.
So as long as it's 75% under the after repair value, right?
Exactly. Total loan amount less than 75% of the after repair value.
Okay. So this is then again under 4 units residential. Do you have anything like, for example, small balance sheet commercial, or for hard money you don't?
So commercial will lend on smaller stuff as well, usually
Okay.
up to 500, 600 grand. And it's going to be borrower specific. It's a different product, a different bucket. I probably
Hmm.
need to see a little bit of experience. I need to know that you know what you're doing in that space. And we're
Sure.
probably rates and points are going to be a little bit different when you start to get to those higher loan amounts, obviously.
And again, when hard money, again, personal guarantee, correct?
Correct. Yep. Still
Okay.
designed for the LLC, still not going to report on your credit. Um, but yeah, absolutely. Gonna need PG.
And since hard money obviously is known to be something short term, is there a time frame as far as term length?
Yep, a bunch of options, 6, 12, and 18, and we can do 24 in some cases where you're really doing a crazy rehab.
Okay. All right, great. We immediately jumped into business, Brian, and all the different products, just because this is, again, my wheelhouse as well. If I could just rewind back, personally, are you originally from the DMV area, Maryland?
I am. I grew up in Essex. I laugh and say I'm Essex trash. I'm from Essex, Maryland, which is just northeast of Baltimore City.
Okay. So growing up in Essex, like as a child, what were you into? Would you like outside of school?
Yep. So I like baseball. That was my sport of choice.
Okay.
My neighborhood was really, really great, man. Like it was maybe 20 or 25 houses and maybe 3 or 4 different families. So on
Hmm.
my same street, I had my mom, who I was super close to, my uncle, the street behind me, I had my aunt. Um, and as I grew up, that obviously changed. So I grew up in house number 507. And when my mom passed away, I actually ended up purchasing her house, which is 607, and that was the first house that I ever owned.
Okay.
Um, and yeah, so that baseball and sports, I was athletic.
So you did high school all through. So grew up, were born and raised in Essex, and after high school, what'd you end up doing?
So I went to UMBC.
Okay.
I thought I wanted to be a computer science major. I did that for 2 years and had a really, really strong GPA. And it kind of fell apart in my fourth semester. And I I decided to take a break, right? So I took a semester off and I went to work at a pawn shop, which I think is a really cool, like integral part of the story, man. Like I learned so much from the owner of that business. I still consider him a mentor. I still talk to him almost every day. He recently sold that business, so that's been like really cool to be a part of, like just to listen and like hear and his experience. I bet I met a lot of people through the pawn shop, and it really shaped a lot of the way that I actually conduct myself in real estate and in business. One thing that the owner always said is, if we say something or if we make an offer, that's it.
Hmm.
Doesn't matter. If somebody calls you on the phone and says, I got one gold coin, and you tell them, which by the way, the price of gold is absurd, but if you tell them you're going to pay X, when they show up and it's a little different than you thought, you're paying X. And that's who we are. And I was like, okay. And and that's has carried through to my real estate. I make a lot of offers from pictures, and some people don't always show you everything in the pictures, but hey, man, if I'm putting it out there, like it's on me to be conservative. Um, but to pick the story back up, right around that time is when my mom passed away, and I remember saying very clearly to my mom, uncle, and aunt who inherited the house, hey, I want to buy the house. They said, okay, we'll sell it to you. The last thing my mom said to me was, please get a college degree. So my aunt, uncle, and mother said, we'll sell you the house when you graduate.
Okay.
And I needed, I took a really long path to get back on, but I ended up graduating in 2015 from University of Baltimore with a degree in finance.
Okay.
Um, and shortly after bought the house.
Okay, great. And then I guess you went afterwards to Northrop Grumman.
Yeah, so I went from the pawn shop. I went to work for a company called Clearview Consulting, which was my first taste of like business, 9 to 5, the 9 to 5 world. I had a cubicle. I had a great boss. I had a great work office, a great everything. Had a window seat cubicle, so it was nice, but a cubicle nonetheless, right?
Yeah.
And that company Clearview was growing crazily, man. I was a part of something really crazy. It was a startup, considered a startup. It was 5 years old at the point that I started, but it I got a taste for it. And then kind of as we got toward COVID, that's when that's when I kind of started looking around. I was like, I'm a wizard with Excel, like I'm really great with numbers. That's when I found Northrop Grumman, which kind of takes us back to the track that we started on in the beginning.
Hmm. Wow, that's great. Brian, you mentioned also all this started, before Beltway with that first investment property, and now your portfolio, I think you said is over 220 properties or so.
202.
Oh, 202, sorry, 202. So just over 200. Are those all here in Maryland?
They are. Every property is in Maryland. So most of them, my everyone knows that I'm really, really strong buyer in Dundalk and Essex, Maryland. Those two are like right. If you're not familiar, they're right next to each other.
Hmm.
And the reason for being so strong there is like someone gave me advice. When I was like 10 properties deep, they were all over east side of Baltimore, Dundalk, Essex, all over. And they're like, hey, you could really scale better if you buy the same asset type. So I was like, oh, what does that mean? It's like, well, I buy end of group houses in Dundalk that are X. And I was like, okay. So I started to pay attention to that, and it took a little while to get a rhythm, but like I'll tell you what that means to me now. I buy 896 square foot Dundalk townhouses or Essex. I also buy 1024 square foot ones. And the reason that that is like a really key piece of the equation is because when you start doing that, like when you start buying that way, the your contractors, your people, your teams, everything becomes standardized.
Hmm.
Like my guys walk into a 3 bedroom townhouse and they're like, okay, it's 18 cases of flooring. Downstairs, we're going to put a divider wall. We're going to put a bathroom here. It starts to save you time. It saves you money. It's always the same flooring, the same. It works out exceptionally well. So that allowed me to continue scaling. I've actually found like 4 other neighborhoods outside of Dundalk that have that same layout. So I
Hmm.
buy there too, like one's on the east side of the city called Parkside. It's a pretty good little pocket that I like. But that's kind of how that is across Maryland though. So I one thing I'll always say is I'll always say to you, like, if you come to me with no experience and you want help and you can, and I have the time because you know how timing goes, but I'll help you. I'll help you start from scratch and do it. And one of my childhood best friends, kid's name is Randy, he lived on that same street that I mentioned earlier. He said, dude, you say that and you can't even relate anymore. Like, I was like, all right, fine, fair enough. I was going to Ocean City that week, and I said, pick a town on the way to Ocean City, and I'll start from scratch with none of my connections other than the money because I do have like I have lenders now.
Sure.
He's like, all right, Cambridge, Maryland. It's on the Eastern Shore. It's a small town, and it's very different. They're mostly single families. There's almost no row homes, which was different than my model. So I drove through the town and I was like, all right, so we're gonna see what happens. Did some analysis on like what I thought they read for, and they're a lot cheaper in that town than where I buy. So I find one on
So I'm sorry, Cambridge is cheaper than Dundalk or Essex.
crazy cheaper.
Really?
Crazy. Yeah,
What is
so
a single family going for there?
they'll appraise for 180, they probably sell for 150, 160.
Okay.
This town is overall small, so you wonder, why would I say it would appraise for
Mm,
more? Because comps are going to overlay from different parts of the town. But I'd say they're probably worth 150. You
okay.
could acquire ones that are hurting, like they're distressed for 80 to 90, and they really don't need that much renovation. They're 800 square foot single families. Um, so my mouth always gets me in trouble, right? I'll talk to anybody, I'll run my mouth and I'll tell you doing things and here it's so somebody said you want to buy one in Cambridge, I got one for you. It's on the 400 block of this street. And I was like, how much is it? He's like 80 grand. And I'm like looking at this and I'm like, man, this is like a 3 bedroom house. I gotta be able to be all in for 100 and like it's so it's like, all right, I'll take it. I closed on it like January of 23 or so. Show up at the house with
With
my guys.
with your own hard money loan, of course.
Actually, I borrowed it from a private lender,
Oh, okay.
and when I told them I was going to buy a house in Cambridge and that the loan wasn't for Dundalk, they like it was a pulse check. They were like, "Oh, okay, we'll
Okay.
do it because it's you."
Yeah.
Keep us updated on this one. So, the house ended up turning out to be a duplex, like 2 meters, to everything, and it was great. I was there checking it out, and I noticed that the house to the right was vacant, and I was like, I got to get the one next door. So I'm just paying attention and I see this red truck pull up. Guy's name is Donnie.
Okay.
Go out and I start talking to him and I'm like, what's up with this house? Like thinking about selling it. And he goes, I'll give it to you for 100 grand. And I was like, all right. Can you walk me through it? And he just finished renovating it. And I was like,
Oh, okay.
this is perfect. Like these numbers line up. Like
Yeah.
now it was the same house, same structure, but it wasn't a duplex. It's just a single. So I was like, what do you think this red's for? He's like, like 13, 1400 a month. And I'm like, okay, simple math. I'm going to beat the 1% rule.
Yeah.
By the way, the property taxes out here are super cheap compared to where I normally play. Like, man,
Okay.
this could be good. So I'm like, all right, any, like I said, my mouth gets me in trouble. Any chance you have anything else you want to sell? I was thinking about retiring. I got like 18 other units. I was like, man, Randy is not going to believe this. All right, hey, let's go see him. And
Oh gosh.
before you know it, I had a little portfolio in Cambridge. And so I have 5 short-term rentals in Ocean City, Maryland. A good batch in Cambridge along the way, and then a lot back in Essex, Dundalk, and on the east side of Baltimore City.
Oh. What did your friend Randy say afterwards?
He didn't believe it at first. I had to drive him through there, and he's like, "This is unbelievable." I said, "Look, man, he's got the gift of gab as well, so
Is he in the
he under
business?
No, no,
Oh,
he's a
okay.
nine to
No
five guy.
interest.
He always jokes and says, "When are you going to hire me at Beltway?" I said, "Whenever you want to start making real money." Um, but yeah, he has gift of gab, so he kind of understood, and he's like, "Nah, you'll talk to anybody, just like I will." So
Okay. Oh wow, that's great. You mentioned earlier, Brian, how when you and your partner started Beltway, you were just it was gonna be like, oh, it just be both of us. We'll see how many loans, and it's turned into, I think you did it over 100 million last year, and I'm sure you have how many loan officers?
yep. So we have 8 right now. We had 6. We hired 2 in 25. We had 6 for 2024.
So how did that evolution and the growth come about? I'm sure you weren't expecting it.
No, so what when we started Beltway, man, the true goal was like when I got let go of that last job, I had like 4 million out in hard money. So like I needed a refi and now I didn't have a place to refi. So I was like, oh, Beltway's gonna we'll just if we just refi 2 million a month at 2 points, like I wouldn't normally want to pay 2 points, but like it's an income for me. Like that'll be enough for me to survive. And when it's just me sitting in my house, like in my office working, like I can sell, process, and do everything.
Mm-hmm.
A contractor that I work with and a really, really good friend of mine both came to me around the same time period. And they're like, "Hey, would you? I know you're doing your own thing. You don't want clients, but would you just do mine? Like these other places suck for different reasons. Like, would you do my refi?" And I was like, "All right." And with no overhead, with nobody pulling at me every day, I can work my exact schedule I like, which is like 6 to 12. And I closed the first loan I ever did for Beltway in 13 days, which is truly unheard of. I don't think I've ever touched that ever again. And then the second one, which I did for my buddy Nico, I think I did that in 15 days. And that first one, the guy's name's Aaron Alberti. The biggest contractor in Maryland. He's a rock star. I don't know if you know the name, but he's a rock star. He came to me and he's like, "What you did is incredible. Do you want the world to know, or do you not want the world to know?" And I said, "I guess I could take on a few more."
Mm-hmm.
By October 1st, I had a $15 million loan pipeline. And Ross said to me, he's like, I'll never forget this. He's like, "Look, right now you're the only guy standing at the lemonade stand. And we can't give enough lemonade out. We need more people to help give lemonade out." Like, okay, so we hired a loan processor, two processors. I hired a woman named Lily, who is truly my right hand. She's incredible. Melissa and Ariel and Tim. Tim was a childhood friend. I worked with him at the pawn shop. He used to run an insurance agency, and Tim took over running the entire sales team. And in about December, he's like, "Hey, I think that we could keep scaling this if we bring on a sales guy." So we started looking for one person to come in, and we found this guy named Brian Ash, and he's with us today. He's really great, truly great. He's actually our top producing sales or loan officer or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So we interview him, and he's a former CFO with an accounting degree, big
Really?
salary or whatever. Yeah. So I like, we go to this
Whoa.
interview, right? Ross, me, and Tim and Brian, and we leave there. We get in the car, and before I could open my mouth, Tim was like, "I love him." Ross was like, "I love it." And I was like, "Ah, man, surround yourself with people that are smarter than you. That's the best advice you get, right?" I looked at them and I was like, "All right, if you guys like him, let's do it. Let's pull the trigger." And it wasn't until like 9 months later that I let all of them know in the same meeting that I truly did not believe it was going to work. I was like, "Man, he's coming from a salary. This is commission. He's never sold this." But man, has he proved me wrong. He's crushed it. He originates somewhere between 4 and 4.5 million loans per month. I'm not sure he's dropped below that since May of 2023.
Wow, almost $50 million a year. Just
It's
him.
crazy. And he's disciplined. He does things that no one else on my sales team does. He does them better than a lot of people that I know. He's very organized. It's truly impressive. We actually part of our process for hiring now, we're super selective. We're very selective on who we hire.
Mm-hmm.
But when we hire a salesperson, we actually make them go and sit with one of our existing salespeople. And anytime I can, I want that to be with Brian Ash because he's really good at reading people. He's had employees when he was the CFO. He's really organized. Like that's the tone that I want to set for new salespeople. Is like this is how he does it. This is how he utilizes the CRM, all those things. And he gets a good read too. So I get a, hey, he was asking a lot of questions. He was really engaged, or this person was out to lunch.
I was going to ask you now, Brian, what do you think sets him apart compared to some of your other salespeople? Is it the
So
organization or what?
So I have two guys that truly kill it at that level. I have Brian Ash and I have a guy named Logan. They both produce very, very similar loan amount, usually around 4 to 4.5 million. If they slip, it's barely slip, right?
Mm-hmm.
And those two people could not be more opposite.
Wow.
Yeah, so Brian is super, super organized and his detail orient, like the way he uses the CRM is unmatched. He sits down in the morning, he's already got his calls put in from the day or the week prior. His meetings are in there, like he doesn't get up, his day's not over until he collapses his list. Logan feels to me more like just run and gun all day. I'm talking to everybody I can. Logan makes pretty funny like video content. Like it's kind of crazy. He made a music video here. But it's such a different style. I think that the key, the thing that we do at Beltway that's really different is all my guys are in the game in one way or another. So Brian Ash owns rentals. Logan's looking at rentals. Tim owns rentals. Every employee, a lot of the sales guys have either done a flip or own rentals.
Hmm.
So we're not 9 to 5 salespeople sitting behind a computer. You come to us and you're like, hey, I want to buy this house for 100. I want to put 20 grand into it. Here's my scope of rehab. And you want to do 2 bathrooms, a kitchen, and a bunch of flooring. We're gonna, hey, man, like 20 grand might be kind of light. Like we could give you real advice.
Hmm.
We're not just trying to sell money and sell the loan. Like, hey, let's, is this accurate? The numbers support a bigger rehab budget. Like I can't tell you how many times we're like, why don't we add like a 10% contingency there just in case you need it? And borrowers will come back to us and say, "Ah, I'm so glad I did that," or, it really worked out well. Even if you don't take it, just have it. You don't want to pay more points down the road to get bigger rehab. Um, but we know the game well. And then our ops team, like I said, we have to know the underwriting guidelines better than anyone for internal purposes. So they keep them all straight.
You were just mentioning earlier, Brian, how I think it was Logan sometimes does videos or singing or dancing or something. I'm curious from a marketing standpoint, what drives the most traffic as far as leads coming in inbound?
That's actually me. And it's not video, it's things like this podcast. I'll speak in front of investors at different in Harrisburg or in Baltimore or wherever. Like my team wants to help you, right? Like, and anytime that we can help you, we do. Now Logan's videos are absurd. Like, I'll tell you. So my Facebook account, like Logan was like, man, you should post videos, then you'll be able to monetize it, which I like. That's not a stream of income for me. It's not my
Sure,
cup
that's
of
not the
tea.
focus.
Exactly. However, I'll tell you a funny story. We took the sales team to Ruth's Chris in Baltimore down on like Pier 5 because they had a incredible month. They hit some goals. And we're all sitting there at this table, which is on a pier. It's on Pier 5. So you're in the inner harbor. And somebody looked at Logan and they're like, I'll give you $100 if you jump in the harbor. I don't know if you know anything about Baltimore Inner Harbor, but it's
Oh my
not
gosh,
water. It is not water you want to get into.
definitely.
So he's like, I'll do it for 20. And everybody at the table's head was like, oh my God, this guy's crazy. He hadn't even been with us for that long. So it was a whole experience. So we're like walking out of there and he's like, where are y'all going? The harbor's this way. And we're all like, you were serious. You want to do this now? And he's like, let's go. So we all filmed it, right? And James edited a couple of them before he put them up. But I just put my raw footage of him diving into the harbor on Facebook. I got almost 1 million views on it, and
Wow.
it actually unlocked my account for monetization, which we've never taken advantage of. But like the point being, like it's absurd stuff like that you never know what's going to be viral, and Logan jumping in the harbor was apparently.
I'm sure that's crazy. So again, from a marketing standpoint, it's basically you going out to RIAs or groups and just talking about what you do in the different programs and products you guys have to offer.
Sort of. So yes and no. So we
Okay.
usually start all of the conversations. We have these crazy slide decks that the team puts together, but we start all the conversations talking about my story and how I got there, like how I
Hmm.
started with 7 grand and got to where I got. And we kind of, I think Ross that owns Beltway would tell you that I do two things really well. I listen pretty good. Like I listen to understand versus listening to reply, but also I can relate to people. You know, how many times have you been to an event? I'm sure, believe me, this has happened to every single one of us. How many times have you been to an event and you're talking to real estate investors that have 5, 10, 20, maybe everybody's got less than 100 units, and a lot of people are new. And the speaker gets up there and he's like, "Yeah, I just raised 300 million in a syndication. I'm buying a 400 unit complex." Like, okay, well, like this room may never get there. And
Hmm.
my target, like if the first thing I do is I ask, hey, where's everybody at? Who's got 0 rentals? Who's got 1 to 5? The different levels of the business. And then I kind of tailor my conversation to like those people, the people like, I don't want you to feel like you wasted your time. I appreciate even getting to stand and talk. So
Hmm.
I don't want to, waste your time.
Yeah, you read the room.
Yeah, that's it.
That's crazy. It's great what you build both on the investment side and with Bellway Lending. So how does your day typically, how does it look like? Are you doing both at the same time or?
Yep. So I am right now about 24 houses so far this year, and I have five, four that close tomorrow. Um, the first half of my day is generally it's super important to me. Like the first thing I do every day is I make my two sons now. I make my oldest son breakfast and I take him to school. And then usually I'm driving down to Dundalk, Essex to check on the projects, make sure that my guys are moving the way I need them to move. By 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock, I'm in the office and I'm working on like Beltway organize, my involvement at Beltway is not super crazy. It's more, I sell a couple loans. I help put some fires out that, Melissa and Tim can't seem to put out, or they want some weigh in. That's usually where I get involved. They actually hate it when I sell loans because they're sloppy. Like Tim does a great job of vetting deals and teaching the guys. Like I'm like, yeah, let's get in the pipeline. I know we're gonna close. This fits the, like they're like, oh my
Yeah.
God. But but yeah, so usually the first half is kind of me being a full-time real estate investor. Second half would be, Beltway and kind of furthering the growth there.
Okay, I see. We've been talking a lot about Maryland and Dundalk, Essex, Baltimore, the city. Are most of your lending in the state of Maryland, or what's the geographic area you guys like to cover?
So we lend in 47 states
Okay,
and we do exceptionally well in about five of them, five different places. So 40% of our volume is Maryland. A lot of our volume is in Cincinnati. We do a lot of loans in Ohio. We do a lot of loans in Louisville, St. Louis, and then Tennessee. Those places right now. We do when I say a lot of loans, like we do probably five or six loans a month in places like Florida and Texas. But
hmm
like we do more than that, in those other places. And it's anywhere like I said, we're a big DSCR shop. So anywhere that the DSCR is going to cover, like we should be your first call. Like, even if you take my term sheet and shop it to anyone, like, I believe me, you're going to get advice from us that you'll keep and use forever, even if we don't do the loan. And we're perfectly okay with that.
sure. I mean, 40% of Maryland makes sense. That's home, right? Why? But why Ohio and Tennessee and Louisville and all?
It's all relationship based. So,
Okay.
um, we had a guy, a vendor that we worked with who was like, hey, I'm putting on an event in Cincinnati. I do a lot of business there. Would you guys want to like co-sponsor with us? It would probably work well. I was like,
hmm
yeah, absolutely. So before you know it, we were there four times a year, and now we're doing another event there in 2 months. And then we do a deceptive amount of loans in Myrtle Beach too. So I have my grandmother lives in Myrtle Beach. I was flying down there. I got on the plane and posted on a Facebook group and was like, "Hey, I'm a real estate investor. I own a lending company. Anybody want to get together and like get lunch or catch up?" And dude, I landed, turned it off airplane mode, I had like 30 comments. So I was like, "Man, this is great." So before you know it, I was meeting with like five, six people at a time. I met with like 20 people over the course of 3 days. I was like, "This is a good target for us." And I met a title company, and then I did this, and now we're hosting an event there in June. Usually relationship based though. So one thing that I haven't mentioned that is a differentiator for Beltway, we pay referral fees. So Beltway lending is on the commercial side of lending. So RESPA does not apply. It applies to your homeowner traditional loans, but not to us. So if you have a borrower, or you have a friend, or you have anybody that is doing a hard money loan or needs a DSCR refi and you bring them to us, we pay you a half a point. But here's why that program is so great. Let's say that you bring me a friend of yours and I do a loan for him tomorrow. You're going to get paid the half a point at closing, and it comes out of my fee. It's not on the HUD. I don't charge extra. It just comes out of my take. If 3 years from now, me and you are no longer talking, we just haven't seen each other, but
hmm
that borrower comes back and I do a loan for him, my CRM is sending you a check. Those that's it. The referral commission is in perpetuity. So that is a huge thing. So we get realtors that are working with investors that'll come to us and they say, "Hey, I got the hard money lender they were using fell through. Can you help?" Absolutely. So now you're getting real estate agent commission and a referral check from us. It's a really good ecosystem, and that's where the majority of our marketing spend actually exists.
Oh, wow, that's interesting.
Yeah, we got a guy that brings us so many deals. I think he's like catching up to some of our salespeople, and like, I mean, it's crazy.
What would you say you're most proud of this far in your business career, Brian?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
What would you say you're most proud of so far in business?
Um, I really like the way Beltway Lending is built. You know, Ross always beat it into my head. We are working on the business, not in the business. So, and a true testament to that is I had my second son in April of last year. He's almost a year old. And I took 2.5 months off, like off for the first
Hmm.
time in a long time, like no email, nothing. And nothing changed. Numbers didn't decrease. They didn't increase a ton, which I didn't, it is what it is, but no decrease. Nobody was taking advantage. Like everybody shows up and does their job. So I really like a couple things about that. Everybody goes into business and they're like, they become like a slave to their business. Like I'm working from 6 a.m. to 7 p.m. and I don't see my kids. I don't miss a thing. I don't miss breakfast in the morning. I don't miss taking Dane to school. I don't miss a single practice of jujitsu or whatever we're doing at the time. Um, and that is a benefit that I afford to my employees as well. I don't ever want to hear that you miss something, ever. If you got something for your child or for a relative that is important to you, just tell me you're not going to be at work that day and don't feel bad about it. I'd rather you be there. We, one thing about this, and James actually said this, he kind of really highlighted this the other day. We are talking about our hiring strategy, and I was like, I don't have any tens that work for me. I have 12s. And I don't want tens, right? We interview a lot of tens, and we're like, man, a lot of places will be really happy to have those tens. And James
Hmm.
cut me off because we were talking to an external guy, and he goes, but just know that Brian takes those 12s and Ross, they take those 12s and then they look at them and they're like, what do you want? What do you need? What can we give you? How can we help you be better, do what you want, and further your goals?
Hmm.
It's not like they have 12s and they beat them down every day. It's like, we want the rock stars, man. I posted like that I'm looking to hire someone. I'll get 30 DMs and I'm like, man, I got to give my phone to somebody else. I'm like, can you figure out who we're going to interview next? Like, it's really rewarding, when someone wants to put Beltway or put my name on their back, man. It's really rewarding.
Speaking about hiring, you have a lot of demand people coming in wanting to work with you in Beltway. And you mentioned two of your superstars you have there originating 40, 50 million plus a year in lending. So if someone's listening to them and they're a 12 or a 15 and they're like, man, this sounds interesting, but how much can I pull? How much can I make? If this person's making doing 40, 50 million, what's my limit here, right?
Yeah. Uh they're making multiple six figures.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you're a rock star and you work at any other hard money or DSCR place and most of those places are probably paying you a quarter point and you can show me the volume to back up what you do, I'm always open to the conversation. And the life that you get here will be I mean, it's very public. I pay more than everybody else. Like my LOs, some of the LOs here make more than Ross and I do. But again, we're hiring adults, self-starters, people that wake up and kill. I always say, I want killers in my corner, right? I want you to wake up and know what I got to do, know how to get there, and then I want you to come to me and be like, "This is what I need to do better and to do more." And believe me, we're going to give it to you.
So these salespeople that potentially can make multiple six figures, I would assume just because if you're a CFO controller, you're not leaving that position unless there's something better out there, right?
Yeah, he was in a unique situation. So he worked for an automotive detailing business that was in a lot of dealerships that were close to the owner of that business, and he was selling that business. And Brian got like a pretty slick severance package,
Mm-hmm.
which we were unaware of, by the way. So he comes in and he's like, we finally decide to hire him, and he's like, we're like, hey, let's do this. For the first 3 months, we're gonna give you like 3 grand, 3,500 as not even a draw. We're just gonna give that to you as a transition period. And he comes back and he's like, if you can make it five, then I'll do it. And I was like, all right, whatever. It's not that
Yeah,
4,500
15
bucks,
grand.
like whatever. Yeah, exactly. So we do it. It was like when I told him that whole thing about like I didn't have the comp. He's like, "Oh yeah, man, I had a salary for the first year I was at Beltway from the last place." I'm like, "Oh come on!" Like, so
Oh
truly a great
man.
guy, man. Truly, he's actually probably in our office today. Tuesday and Thursday is crazy in our office. He's probably up front. I wonder if when he'll hear this, he'll get a good laugh.
So are your salespeople, Brian, are they originating leads too, or how does it work? Are you guys bringing in the leads and you're just giving them to them, or?
Exactly. So in the beginning, it was a model that Ross wasn't comfortable with. Ross comes from previous. Ross was a business owner for years before he and I did this, but
Hmm.
his past puts him as an exec at Verizon, sales, and then worked his way up to being an exec.
Hmm.
And he said to me, he's like, dude, I know that you make it rain. Like I see it. That's how we're here. He's like, but if you feed these salespeople, you're gonna create, you know, less hungry salespeople. And I'm like, yeah, but dude, like I can't originate these. There's too many loans. Like what do you want me to do? Like, so we did. We just I hand them off, and we teach the guys about the referral commission, how to frame certain conversations, right? It might say to you like, "Hey, if you're happy with me and you have three friends that are investing, I'd love to just talk to them," right? Like, I don't need to do a loan, I just like to talk to them, or whatever, Hey, Google reviews this. We have 155-star Google reviews right now, which is another crazy stat, right? Um, but so then here's the lead flow is interesting. So when someone starts with me, I take all my leads that come in for me, and Tim does the same, and we basically will start the deal. We'll talk to the borrower with the new sales guy. You're kind of like drinking from a fire hydrant, is what Tim says, right? You're
Hmm.
listening to us, but once I sell the deal, I put it in your name and I let you take over. You're going to get paid on that. You're going to do it. You're going to take it from step, the first deal, you're going to take from step 7 to step 10. Then I'm going to slowly work you back until you're step 1 to 10. And all the while you're taking the leads, you're running with them. And then when, we don't hire salespeople too quickly. If I tell you that you're going to make, if I tell you that you're going to make 15 grand a month, 20 grand a month, then I don't hire a salesperson until you're making 15 or 20 grand a month. I'm never going to be the guy that sells you a dream and
Hmm.
says, now look, if you don't perform and you don't put the work in, I can't help that. Right. But I've only had one salesperson that left me because of that. It was actually my stepdad, and he went on to make even more than it was pretty crazy. But anyway, so what I do when a salesperson is truly running and we're ready to hire another one is Tim and I will we'll turn that faucet off for you. And the next person is going to start getting leads. Now, when a client comes back to us, that remains your customer. So, or your client, right? So, investors, that's the big difference in the traditional mortgage world versus the investor world. Is like an investor may do 5 refis in a year, some will do 2 in a month. But on the traditional side, you might not refi your house once every 5 to 7 years, depending on rates. We do a really good job of taking care of clients and making sure that we get repeat business. And that helps build a pipeline. Before you know it, you have a pretty consistent 2, 3 million closing every month, and you're well on your way to where you want to be financially.
I'm sure the majority of the business too is just repeat business, right?
Yeah, about 65% is repeat every month.
Okay, that's great. It's a beautiful thing about what you're doing. It's
It
just,
definitely helps that growth curve.
yeah.
We tell the sales guys don't get too concentrated with one borrower because like things can happen. They may slow down, they may take a break, they may take a long vacation. But you want to be wide versus heavy on one borrower. You want to it's be better to have, 10 borrowers with 2 loans than it would be to have, 4 borrowers with 5. The wider you can get, the more stable you can make your income.
Brian, on either the lending side of your business or the investment side, what would you say is your biggest fail or setback? And what you learn from that?
That's a great question, man. I'm super aggressive on the buying side. Um, I've overpaid for houses. Now I've been fortunate that it's worked out in the long run. Obviously, real estate's a game of waiting, but that does carry over into Beltway lending. And like in the beginning, I was aggressive on the hiring front, and Ross is not. Ross, so at my in the life of Beltway lending, we have let go of 5 people, and to me, that's my role as CEO. Like if someone's going to take away an income, it's going to be me because that's
Hmm.
that's a heavy decision, and I wouldn't want to put that on like Tim or Melissa, even though maybe we could all argue that maybe they should as the manager, as the team lead, whatever. But like I take that pretty serious. So those 5, it hurts, man. Like it's worse in some cases, worse than losing a relative, right? And because I already told you, I'm only generally hiring high quality people. However, in the beginning of Beltway, I maybe hired, I was more aggressive in hiring. And Ross would always say to me, man, we got to slow down. Like, let's interview more people, or I don't like this about this. I think they're good, but there's this. I like this, but that. And I guess I wasn't listening in the beginning as well as I listen now. And, you know, look, when you wake up and see 15 million in the pipeline, you got to figure out a way to process. And I'm like, man, we need to hire. We need help,
Hmm.
Uh, but that I would say that, man, I'm aggressive. I like to run and gun. I like to make decisions on the fly. I do not let perfection beat progress, right? I am going to get moving and we're going to make adjustments along the way. And that's our hiring, our hiring system now is really tuned in. Like we don't even interview you until like week 3. And at that point, you've sat with 2 of my employees, you've done a couple other things. And then if all of that, if my team likes you and you still like what we're doing, then we interview you. And it really eliminates people who are looking for that immediate job, right? Like are not truly here for what I'm building. I want people that want to build with me. That I don't, the worst thing in the world is training someone for 3, 4, 5, 6 months and then they move on. It's like, man, I got
Hmm.
to start all over. I got to do all this. Like, so that's, I'd say I'm aggressive. I like to move fast and sometimes I move a little too fast.
And the whole team is working from there, from the main office, from headquarters, or do you have anyone remote?
I have an employee in Tennessee. I have an employee in Tampa, and everyone else is local to like where we're at within 20, 30 minutes. We don't make anybody come in mandatory. So we tell the sales team when you're new, well, when you're new, we do, but that's like a training period. I want you to
Sure.
kind of think the way we think, see the way we see. But we tell the sales team, hey, Tuesday and Thursday, come on in. Let's all work together on this. Like, let's, being in the room, hearing people talk, you're going to learn how to talk differently. You're going to hear different words. You're going to hear different objections. So Tuesday, Thursday is really packed in our office. I got a lot of the ops people, a lot of the ops people in, and a lot of the sales people. Brian Ash, still working from home on Tuesday, Thursday. He's locked in front of that CRM. But everybody, most of the other people are here. Logan's trying to make funny videos. I just posted one. James is using AI to make funny photos of people, and it took Logan's picture and made him look like he's 350 pounds. Like it's a good, it's a like I said, it's a good culture that's huge. But Monday there will be 3 or 4 of us here. Tuesday there will be 15 of us here. Wednesday's slow. Thursday's busy. Friday it'll be like me and one person, and that's probably my most productive day of the week.
Okay. You mentioned the CRM a couple of times. Who do you use? What do you use for CRM?
Yep, we use Zoho as a
Okay.
CRM. And everybody will say like, "Oh, this CRM's better, or this, that." A lot of people may have heard this, but the best CRM is the one that you use,
Yep.
right? It doesn't matter like what has 100 million features, the one that you actually use.
Yeah. Coming
So
to an end here soon, Brian. What would you say is the biggest challenge with your role today at Beltway Lending?
dividing my day, like being effective and making sure I'm effective with the time that I allocate. So one thing that I didn't even mention about this that on this is that about 9 months ago, Beltway launched Beltway Mortgage. So we actually cater to homeowners now as well. So if you need to buy a house or if you're if you need a loan for real estate, period, the Beltway
Wow.
brands, we can do it. However, like every day I have to like figure out I am an investor, I own a lending company for investors, and I own a lending company for homeowners. So I like it's that, time blocking for the day and look, I really like to cold call. So then, I walk in the office and I see the team cold calling and I'm like, oh man, give me the phone. Like and I realize, oh man, I should be probably doing something a little bit different. But before you know it, 45 minutes has gone by, I've made X amount of calls and I'm in the mix with the guys. So uh it's really making sure that the toughest part that I have to truly stay cognizant of every day is like, is this the highest and best use of my time?
Yeah. Where does your capital come from?
Great question. So some of it is friends and family internally raised at 10%. So we pay 10% for capital per year. If you had money sitting in a savings, IRA, anything like that, I can put it to work and secure to real estate. Everybody's heard that pitch from everybody. Ours is actually systematic though. We use real software. Like it's not like your mom and pop shop. I also have a bank that saw what we were doing and they said, "Hey, we will give you a good bit of capital at this rate for this bucket," which is where I derive my 10% down product. Um, and then the DSCR, that's all sold at the table. You know, we originated it, sold at the table. So nothing truly needed there. We're more like we're not a broker, but we're not a correspondent. We're somewhere in the happy medium.
Okay. What do you know now that you wish you would have known at the start of your career?
Think way ahead, you know, like start thinking, what does it look like in 3 years and 5 years? That sounds like
Hmm.
way ahead, but 5 years ago, I didn't have any rental properties. You know, my wife actually brought this up the other day. She's like, you know, we got married like 6 or 7 years, 6 years ago. She's like, you know, like we didn't have any rentals. Like this is like what you've accomplished in 5 years is crazy. But and I'm not saying that as like an ego thing, but more like what you can actually accomplish in 5 years is crazy. The guy at that hard money lending company said something to me on day one. I was running a little eBay business doing 80 grand a year and things like that. And he's like, when you work for me, you focus on real estate, you focus on me, you focus on what we're doing. I do not want 10 side hustles. And the funny thing is, like, I've been told that a bunch of times in my life from the pawn shop owner, from Matt Lerner, owns a coin shop, who's a huge mentor. Everybody told me that, but it never clicked until I heard it that day. And when it did, man, I set the world on fire. Like I love real estate. It's my thing. Um, so that's it. You know, like if you lock in what you can accomplish in 5 years, it'll blow you away.
That's great advice. Speaking about thinking about way ahead, what does the future look like for you and Beltway Lending? What are you most excited about?
We set a pretty crazy goal for Beltway this year. We want to try to originate a quarter billion.
Nice.
So we want to go from 172 last year to 250 this year, and that's a reach. Um, that's a good reach, but that's the goal, man. So we want to keep scaling Beltway. I want to help my sales guys all get to that, you know, 4 to 5 million a month number. Like I'd like to get them all there. Make sure that Beltway is growing. I'm actively growing the mortgage side, the traditional side of lending, which is a lot of fun, and you know, the rentals. I might try to follow your path a little bit here. I'm thinking about downsizing on some of the rentals, some of the residential stuff, and 1030 wanting that into some smaller commercial stuff. I bought 10 commercial properties last year, and I'm learning, and it's painful. It reminds me of when I started. Okay, I got a pretty painful commercial property that I've owned now. But look, you can cut your teeth one way or another, right? So
Yeah.
I think that's my goal is to move toward like some commercial stuff and learn that and put a little commercial portfolio together.
All right. That's great. When you're not busy working and running all these companies, Brian, what do you like to do for fun in your free time? I know you mentioned your family and your two kids earlier.
I like to run, and it might not look like it right now. I used to run like 20 to 30 miles a week. That's what helps me keep my head right. Like I really like running. I started running again a few weeks ago, and it's great. I'm back up to like 2 miles a night, so I'm really happy with that. Slower pace than I want to be. Don't worry, and the family stuff, man. That's it, you know.
Hmm.
But running is kind of that hobby for me that's always been there.
Yeah, I agree. For me, fitness, that's why first thing in the morning, when everyone's still asleep in my house, I have three boys. That's my thing, just my mental clarity. It's my therapy. I call it my iron therapy. Um,
How old are your boys?
I have my oldest 13, then I have 11, and then 8.
Okay, so I have five and almost one. So I wake up pretty early when it's really quiet in the house, and I usually run at night, actually. That's just I don't want people to see me. That's how that started. But but no, I'm an early guy, so I can understand.
That's great. If people want to learn more about you and what you're doing at Belway, where can they go to, please?
Yep. So you find me on any of the social media. I'm generally Brian Valdivia, Beltway Lending. My cell phone number is everywhere. So if you search Brian Valdivia, you'll find it. My email is brian@beltwaylending.com.
And that's
And
your cell phone number.
my cell phone's out there, man. It's four
Okay.
four three 845 2273. I've said it on so many of these things. It's like so I answer as many unknown calls as humanly possible, right? It's always something. It's either And usually what I do is like every couple Thursdays, I'll put a calendar link on my personal Facebook, and you
Mhm.
can book me for 30 minutes for free, and we can talk about whatever you want.
Oh,
Usually I
man.
like it to be real estate targeted because that's what I can weigh in on. Someone called me and was like, "What do you think about this cleaning business?" And I'm like, I mean, yeah, it sounds really great. But but if I got the time in, like you should be able to get a hold of me pretty easily.
That's great. Brian, thank you so much for coming on today. Had a great time.
I really appreciate the opportunity.
Of course. Take care.